Commander Jinwoo had been working the night shift at Seoul's Deep Space Command Center when everything changed. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, and the soft hum of computers filled the quiet room. Outside the reinforced windows, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. But Jinwoo's attention was focused on the screens, showing the vast emptiness of space. That's when the signal came through. At first, it sounded like static, mixed with what might have been music. The computers started going crazy, trying to process sounds they'd never heard before. Jinwoo called over his shoulder to the communications team, his voice cutting through the sudden excitement in the room. "Get Dr. Hyjin down here right now," he ordered, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Wake up Admiral Taemin. Tell him we've got something big." Dr. Hyjin arrived within 20 minutes, her hair still messy from sleep, but her eyes sharp with curiosity. She was Earth's top expert in alien languages, though until this moment that had been purely theoretical work. She'd spent years studying mathematical patterns and universal concepts, preparing for a day that might never come. Now that day was here. "Play it again," she said, settling into the chair beside Jinwoo. Her fingers flew across her tablet as strange, beautiful sounds filled the command center, as the transmission was unlike anything in Earth's databases. It had rhythm and structure, but also something else, a quality that made everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. "There's emotion in this," Hyjin muttered, adjusting her headphones. Real fear. For 3 straight days, she barely left her workstation. Jinwoo brought her meals and watched as she slowly pieced together the alien message. She used every tool at her disposal: pattern recognition software, mathematical analysis, even musical theory. The breakthrough came when she realized the aliens were using mathematical concepts as a base language. "They're called the Kulri," she announced to the emergency council that had gathered in the secure briefing room. Admiral Taemin sat at the head of the table, his weathered face showing no emotion as he studied the translation on his tablet. Around him, Earth's top military and scientific minds waited for her report. "Their entire solar system is under attack," Hyjin continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was reporting. "Something they call the Harvest Fleet is moving from planet to planet, destroying everything in its path. They've already lost 6 worlds." The room fell silent. Lieutenant Sora, Jinwoo's tactical officer, spoke first. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Thousands," Hyjin replied. "Maybe tens of thousands. The Kalari described them as metal locusts that strip entire worlds down to rock and metal." Admiral Taemin studied the star charts projected on the main screen. The Kalari homeworld was marked with a red dot, surrounded by the estimated positions of the Harvest Fleet. 12 light-years away, he said quietly. "We could reach them with our new FTL drives, but it would take everything we have." "Something else," Hyjin added, her voice dropping. "The Kalari have never fought a war. Their language doesn't even have words for military strategy or weapons. They're asking for help from anyone who can fight because they literally don't know how." Jinwoo felt a chill run down his spine. He'd spent his entire career preparing for threats to Earth, but he'd never imagined humanity might be called upon to defend another species. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "Their message is getting weaker," he reported, checking his instruments. "The transmission power is dropping with each repetition. I think their communication systems are failing." The Kalari were running out of time, and Earth was their only hope, Captain Minho gripped the armrest of his command chair as the reconnaissance ship dropped out of hyperspace. The journey to Kalari territory had taken 2 weeks, and his crew was exhausted from the constant stress of traveling through unknown space. Nothing could have prepared them for what they saw when the stars stopped streaking past their windows. "Dear God," whispered Communications Officer Yunsu, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. The Harvest Fleet filled the entire view screen. Thousands upon thousands of ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, their metal hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the black of space. They weren't built like human ships, with their rough angles and practical designs. These vessels looked more like living things, smooth, organic curves that somehow felt wrong to human eyes. Sir, reported Ensign Young Su from the sensor station, his young face pale with shock. I'm detecting 17 dead worlds in this system alone. The energy readings suggest they've been completely stripped of all resources. Minho stood up slowly, studying the tactical display. Each red dot on the screen represented a world that had once been home to millions of Kaleri. Now they were nothing but empty rocks floating in space, their surfaces scarred and lifeless. How long? He asked quietly. Based on the decay patterns. Sir, the first world was processed about 6 months ago. The most recent one was destroyed just 3 days before we arrived. The crew worked in tense silence as they intercepted communications from both the Harvest fleet and the fleeing alien vessels. The translation software that Dr. Hygen had developed back on Earth slowly made sense of the alien languages, revealing a picture that chilled Minho to his core. Captain called out Lieutenant Hyenwu from the intelligence station. I'm picking up transmissions from other species, the Althari, the Novani, dozens of different civilizations. They're all talking about the same thing, the Harvest fleet. As the hours passed, the human crew began to understand the true scope of what they were witnessing. The galaxy was full of intelligent species, but they were nothing like humanity. The Althari had evolved on a world where plants grew without effort and weather was always perfect. They had become master gardeners, creating incredible living cities that grew from the ground itself. Their greatest achievement was learning to communicate with plants. The Novani were even more peaceful. They had developed philosophy and meditation, to such a degree that they could resolve any conflict through careful discussion. Their world had no predators, no natural disasters, no scarcity of resources. They had never needed to fight for anything. Sir, Yang Su reported, his voice shaking slightly. I'm analyzing the Kaleri cultural databases, their artists, Captain. Their entire civilization is built around creating beautiful crystal sculptures. They've spent the last 1,000 years perfecting their art forms. Minho felt a sick feeling in his stomach. Any mention of military forces, weapons, defense systems? None, sir. The closest thing they have to weapons are mining tools and construction equipment. The captain watched as another Harvest fleet formation moved toward what appeared to be the last inhabited Kaleri world. The mechanical ships worked with terrifying efficiency, surrounding the planet like antibodies attacking an infection. There was no communication, no demands, no negotiation. They simply began their work. Captain, whispered Yunesu, I'm detecting a Kaleri colony ship trying to escape.
Alloys.
It's heading for the outer rim of the system. On the main screen, a single crystalline vessel fled from the dying world, its hull reflecting the orange glow of its sun. The ship was beautiful in a way that human vessels never were. It looked like a work of art rather than a machine of war. They're the last ones, Minho realized. The last survivors of their entire species. The Harvest fleet ignored the fleeing ship. Their work was nearly complete, and a single vessel posed no threat to their systematic consumption of the Kaleri worlds. Minho watched in horror as the mechanical entities continued their methodical destruction. Treating the extinction of an entire civilization as nothing more than a routine task, maintain stealth, he ordered quietly. We need to get this information back to Earth. The galaxy is full of defenseless species, and something is hunting them all. The emergency session began at dawn in the underground bunker beneath Geneva. President Sujan hadn't slept in 36 hours, and the coffee in her cup had gone cold long ago. Around the massive circular table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth, their faces grim as they studied the intelligence reports from Captain Minho's reconnaissance mission. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Defense Minister Jae-sung, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We're being asked to fight a war against an enemy that has destroyed 17 civilizations. Using technology we barely understand to save aliens we've never met. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stakes, but saying it out loud made the situation feel even more impossible. General Kyuncho stood up and walked to the holographic display at the center of the room. With a few gestures, he brought up images of the Harvest. Fleets, geometric formations. Look at these attack patterns, he said, his weathered hands pointing to specific ship movements. They're perfectly efficient, mathematically precise, but they're also completely predictable. Predictable? Asked the French representative, leaning forward in his chair. General, these ships have conquered multiple star systems.
Against?
Enemies who think like gardeners and philosophers, Kung Ho replied. Clary's idea of conflict resolution is creating prettier crystal sculptures. The Althari believe all problems can be solved by growing the right plants. None of them have ever faced an enemy who wants to destroy them. Dr. Hyjin activated her tablet and projected new information onto the main screen. The Kalari have been incredibly generous with their technical data. Their ships use energy systems that could power entire cities. Their materials are stronger than anything we've ever developed. But when I asked them about defensive strategies, they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. President Sujin studied the alien ship designs. The Kalari vessels were beautiful, all flowing curves and crystalline surfaces that seemed to catch light from impossible angles. They looked more like floating cathedrals than military craft. What are our chances? She asked quietly, honestly. General Kunho pulled up Earth's military inventory. Our ships are slower, our weapons are primitive, and our armor is basically paper compared to what the Harvest Fleet can deploy. But we have something they've never encountered before, which is the ability to think like killers. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Taman, who had been silent throughout most of the session, finally spoke up. Every human child plays games where they pretend to be soldiers. We tell stories about heroes who fight against impossible odds. Our entire history is written in blood and warfare. It's not necessarily something to be proud of, pointed out the Canadian representative. Maybe not, admitted Admiral Taman. But it might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Dr. Hyjin brought up intercepted communications from other alien species. The Nilvani have been sending meditation instructors to help the Kalari find inner peace during their evacuation. The Althari are offering to grow memorial gardens for the dead worlds. They're all trying to help in the only ways they know how. We're offering to teach them how to kill, President Sujin said softly. We're offering to teach them how to survive, corrected General Kyung Ho. There's a difference. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity should focus on its own defense, building up Earth's protection instead of getting involved in a galactic war. Others worried about the precedent they would set by becoming the galaxy's military force. But as the hours passed, one thing became clear. The Harvest Fleet wasn't going to stop with the Kolari. They were moving systematically through the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Eventually, they would reach Earth. We can fight them here, on our terms, with alien allies and advanced technology, General Kyung Ho argued. Or we can wait for them to come to us, after they've had years to study human resistance and prepare countermeasures. The final vote was unanimous, though some representatives looked sick as they raised their hands. Within days, shipyards across Earth were working around the clock. The Kalari had transmitted detailed technical specifications for their energy weapons and defensive systems. Human engineers worked frantically to integrate alien technology into Earth's existing fleet. The KNS Incheon was the first ship to be retrofitted, its hull bristling with hybrid human-alien weapon systems. Captain Delsu walked through the corridors marveling at the strange mixture of human practicality and alien elegance. "It's beautiful," whispered Kalari Engineer Thomases, as he helped install the new systems. "Your people have such an interesting approach to problem-solving," Dalsu smiled grimly. "Wait until you see us solve problems with explosives." The transport shuttle docked with the Kalari vessel with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Su-young checked her uniform one final time before stepping through the airlock. This was humanity's first face-to-face meeting with an alien species, and she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Nothing could have prepared her for what lay beyond the airlock doors. The Harmony's edge didn't look like any ship humans had ever built. Instead of metal corridors and harsh lighting, Su-young found herself walking through what seemed like a crystal palace. The walls were made of some translucent material that caught and refracted light in impossible ways, creating rainbows that danced across every surface. Soft, musical tones filled the air. Not quite music, but something that made her feel peaceful despite the circumstances. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Yunji, her voice filled with awe. "Ah, are we sure this is actually a spacecraft?" Before Su-young could answer, the cavalry delegation appeared. The humans had seen images from the intercepted communications, but seeing the aliens in person was completely different. They were tall and graceful, moving with a fluid elegance that made human movement seem clumsy by comparison. Their skin wasn't exactly crystalline, but it had the same quality as the ship's walls, translucent and constantly shifting with subtle colors. Elder Theron stepped forward, and Su-young noticed that his skin was currently a soft blue color. According to the briefing materials, this indicated calm curiosity, but as his eyes met hers, the blue began to shift toward amber. "Welcome aboard the Harmony's Edge," Theron said, his voice carrying a melodic quality that the translation software couldn't quite capture. "We are grateful that you have come so far to aid us in our time of need." "We're honored to be here," Sui-young replied, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. Theron looked at her outstretched hand with confusion, and she realized that different species probably had different customs. She let her hand drop awkwardly to her side. That's when she noticed that all the Kalari were staring at her with what appeared to be growing concern. Their skin colors were shifting rapidly through various shades of amber and orange. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Theron's crystals turned a deeper amber. "Forgive us, Captain. We did not expect. Your species emanates such intensity. You can sense the potential for violence in your every movement." Lieutenant Yonji stepped forward, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm before she caught herself. "We mean you no harm. We're here to help." "We understand your intentions," said another Kalari, whose nameplate identified him as Navigator. "Quelm, but your bodies carry the memory of countless battles. How do you live with such energy without destroying each other?" So-young realized they were facing a cultural challenge she hadn't anticipated. "We don't avoid conflict," she explained. "Carefully, we learn to control it. Every human child learns that strength must be used to protect, not to harm unnecessarily." The Kalari exchanged glances, their crystals flickering with rapid color changes. Clearly, this concept was difficult for them to understand. "Perhaps a demonstration would help," suggested Yunji. "With your permission, I could show you some basic military formations." The moment the human Marines entered the meeting chamber, the Kalari reaction was immediate and dramatic. Their crystals flashed bright red, and several of them took involuntary steps backward. The Marines were simply walking in formation, their weapons holstered, but to the Kalari, it must have looked like a predatory pack on the hunt. "This is deeply unsettling," whispered Quelm, his voice shaking. "How can you move with such coordinated aggression? Every step seems calculated for maximum destructive potential." Sergeant Jihan, the squad leader, looked confused. "We're just walking, sir. This is standard parade formation." "Standard for you, perhaps," Theron said, his crystals now cycling through rapid patterns of red and orange. "But for us, witnessing organized violence is like watching a natural disaster unfold." In slow motion, Swang began to understand the magnitude of the challenge they faced. The Kalari hadn't just avoided war. They had evolved on a world where aggression itself was foreign. Their entire species had developed along completely different lines than humanity. "Elder Theron," she said gently, "how do your people resolve?" "Disagreements? Through harmony," he replied, his crystals slowly returning to blue. "We create beauty together until the disagreement becomes irrelevant. When Dekori disagree about the shape of a crystal sculpture, they work together too, create something more beautiful than either could imagine alone. And if someone refuses to cooperate," Theron's crystals flickered with confusion. "Refuse? Why would anyone refuse to create beauty?" The gap between their species was even wider than Su-young had imagined. These weren't just peaceful aliens. They were beings who had never encountered the concept of malicious intent. The mining world of Kelith 7 hung in space like a wounded giant, its surface scarred by massive excavation operations that had been abandoned when the Harvest Fleet arrived. Commander Duhayan stood on the bridge of the retrofitted destroyer Soul's Pride, watching as the enemy formation approached with mechanical precision. "Contact in 30 minutes. reported Navigation Officer Minesio, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. Enemy formation consists of 12 advanced scouts, moving in perfect hexagonal pattern. Duhea nodded, studying the tactical display. The Harvest Fleet ships moved like pieces on a chessboard, each vessel maintaining exact distances from its neighbors. Their approach was mathematically flawless, designed to maximize coverage while minimizing vulnerability. On the shared communication channel, he could hear the colliery crew members aboard the crystal ship Luminous Dawn. Engineer Voss was practically sighing with admiration as he watched the enemy approach. "Commander, you must observe their formation," Voss said, his voice carrying that musical quality that all Klari possessed. "The symmetry is absolutely perfect. Its ship maintains precisely the same distance from its neighbors. The mathematical precision is extraordinary." Duhayan felt his jaw clench. Even facing extinction, the Kalari couldn't help but appreciate the artistic beauty of their destroyers. "That's exactly the problem," he muttered to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sangmi. "They think war is supposed to be beautiful." The Harvest Fleet continued its methodical advance, their ships gleaming like deadly sculptures against the star. Field Duhayan had studied their attack patterns for weeks, analyzing every engagement recorded by fleeing alien vessels. The mechanical entities always used the same approach, overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. "Sir," reported Weapons Officer Junho, "enemy ships are charging their primary weapon systems. They're maintaining formation, preparing for coordinated strike." "Of course they are," Duhayan said quietly. "They've done this exact same thing 1,000 times before. Every species they've encountered has tried to meet them with organized resistance." Lieutenant Sangmi looked up from her console. "But we're not going to give them organized resistance, are we, sir?" "Definitely not." Duhayan activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Sol's Pride. Prepare for scatter. Pattern Omega. On my mark, break formation and implement chaos protocols." The Kalari on the shared channel sounded confused. "Commander Duhayan," called Navigator Nex from the Luminous Dawn, "our tactical computers cannot calculate your intended formation." "Are you experiencing systems failure?" "No systems failure," Duhayan replied. "We're about to show you something the Harvest Fleet has never seen before."
Dad.
The enemy scout formation was now close enough that individual ships could be seen clearly. They were sleek and deadly, their hulls covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and pulse with internal light. Each vessel was identical to its neighbors, perfect mechanical copies designed for maximum efficiency.
Duhayan
Said quietly, the human fleet exploded into motion. Ships that had been moving in neat formation suddenly scattered in every direction, their paths seemingly random and chaotic. The Sol's Pride dove toward the asteroid field, while the destroyer Bison's Thunder climbed at a steep angle toward the system's outer rim. On the tactical display, Duhayan watched the Harvest Fleet's reaction. For the first time in recorded history, their perfect formation wavered. The mechanical ships slowed, their course adjustments becoming hesitant as they tried to calculate human intentions. "They're confused," breathed Sangmi, watching the enemy formation stutter like a computer trying to process corrupted data. "They don't know which target to prioritize." "That's because there is no pattern to prioritize," Duhayan said. "Human captain is making independent decisions based on battlefield conditions. No computer can predict chaos." The Harvest Fleet tried to adapt, their formation beginning to spread out to cover more targets. But they were still thinking like machines, trying to maintain mathematical precision, even as their enemy refused to follow any logical pattern. "Right now," Duhayan ordered. The attack came from every direction at once. Human ships emerged from behind. Asteroids dove from above the orbital plane and attacked from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Their missiles followed erratic flight paths. Dodging and weaving through space like living things, the Harvest Fleet's point defense systems, designed to intercept threats following predictable trajectories, couldn't track the chaotic attack. Patterns. 3 enemy vessels exploded in brilliant flashes, their perfect hulls torn apart by human weapons. "Impossible," whispered Voss over the communication channel. Your missiles are following no mathematical model. How do you coordinate such an attack without predetermined patterns? Lieutenant Sangmi smiled grimly as she watched another enemy. Ship succumb to human weapons. That's what makes us dangerous, engineer. We don't need patterns to kill. We just need the will to survive. The Harvest fleet was retreating, their formation broken and confused. For the first time in their mechanical existence, they had encountered an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. The Colliery home system had never seen anything like it. A wall of mechanical ships stretched across the darkness, so massive that they blocked out entire constellations. The Harvest fleet's main force had finally arrived, and their numbers were beyond counting. Admiral Tammin stood on the bridge of the EU's Soul, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he studied the tactical display. Around him, human and Colliery officers worked side by side, their voices creating a strange harmony of multiple languages and species. "Sir," reported scanner operator Jiyoung, her voice tight with controlled fear, reading over 10,000 enemy vessels. They're arranged in perfect geometric patterns, just like we expected. "Look at them," whispered Kalari, Navigator Vel, his crystals flickering with unwilling admiration. "Even facing our destruction, I cannot help but marvel at their mathematical precision. Every ship is positioned exactly where it should be for maximum efficiency." Commander Dalsu, Taemin's second-in-command, studied the enemy formation with the cold eye of a career military officer. "They're going to try to surround us, Admiral. Classic harvesting pattern. They'll form a sphere around our position and compress inward until we have nowhere to run." "How long until they complete the encirclement?" Taemin asked. 18 minutes at current speed, Dalsu replied. "They're not even trying to hide their intentions. They're so confident that they're broadcasting their tactical plans in the clear time." And almost smiled. "Of course they are. They've done this exact same thing to hundreds of species. Why would they expect anything different from us?" Now the Harvest fleet moved with the relentless precision of clockwork. Each ship maintained perfect distance from its neighbors, their approach creating geometric patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so terrifying. They had turned warfare into an art form, but it was the art of extermination. Admiral called out Communications Officer Yoon Soo. "The Colliery evacuation ships are reporting they're ready to jump to hyperspace. On your command?" "Not yet," Taemin said quietly. "If we run now, they'll just follow us. This ends here, one way or another." On the shared communication channel, he could hear the voices of captains from both species. Human officers were running final weapons checks, while Colliery technicians made last-minute adjustments to their crystal-powered systems. "All ships. This is Admiral Taemin," he announced, his voice carrying across the entire combined fleet. "In 60 seconds, we're going to show these machines something they've never seen before. Signal all vessels. Prepare to initiate chaos. Protocol." The term Chaos Protocol had been coined during the joint training exercises. It was humanity's answer to the Harvest fleet's mathematical precision, a battle plan that had no plan. Strategy based on the complete absence of strategy. Chaos. "Protocol confirmed," reported Captain Sujin from the destroyer Incheon. "All human vessels standing by." "Colliery ships also ready," added Commander Thomas's from the crystal vessel Harmony's Light. "Though I still do not understand how deliberately creating disorder can be considered tactical," Yul Taemin promised. Mark what happened next. Defied every military doctrine that had ever been written. The combined human Colliery fleet exploded into motion that seemed completely random. Ships dove toward the system's star, climbed toward the outer rim, spiraled in patterns that appeared to have no purpose whatsoever. The Harvest fleet's reaction was immediate and telling. Perfect formation stuttered individual ships, slowing as they tried to calculate human intentions. For the first time in their mechanical existence, they encountered an enemy that refused to behave predictably. "Sir," reported Colliery technician Nex, his crystals glowing with excitement. "Their command ship is broadcasting massive data streams. The computational load is enormous. They're trying to process thousands of different tactical scenarios simultaneously. Their AI is choking on the chaos," observed Lieutenant Sangmi from the weapons console. "They can't predict what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to do." The Harvest Fleet's formations began to break down. Ships that had maintained perfect positioning for millions of years started making course corrections, then correcting their corrections, then correcting those corrections. Their coordination was collapsing under the weight of infinite possibilities. Now, Taman ordered, "Give them something truly impossible to calculate." The final assault was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships broadcast recordings of ancient war cries, battle hymns, and the sounds of human rage that had echoed across Earth's battlefields for millennia. The psychological warfare was completely alien to the Harvest Fleet's mechanical minds. At the same time, Kalari crystal technology created resonance weapons that turned the enemy's own communication networks against them. The beautiful harmonic frequencies that the Kalari had perfected for art now created feedback loops in the Harvest Fleet's systems. The result was chaos in the truest sense. The enemy fleet's perfect coordination collapsed into mechanical confusion, their ships colliding with each other as their navigation systems failed. For the first time in galactic history, the Harvest Fleet was retreating in disorder. The Harvest Fleet's retreat was almost as unsettling as their attack had been. Mechanical ships that had been thrown into chaos just hours before were now withdrawing in perfect geometric formations, their movements precise and calculated once again. But something fundamental had changed. The aura of unstoppable inevitability that had surrounded them for generations was gone. Captain Seung watched from the observation deck of Kalari Station Prime as the last enemy vessels disappeared into hyperspace. The battle was over, but she knew the real work was just beginning. All around her, the station buzzed with activity as beings from multiple species worked together to assess the damage and plan for the future. Captain called out Communications Officer Min Yon, her voice cutting through the chatter. "We're receiving transmission requests from across the galaxy. Seems word of our victory has spread faster than we expected." Su-young wasn't surprised. Galactic communication networks had been buzzing with reports of the impossible species that had actually defeated the Harvest Fleet in open combat. For civilizations that had lived in terror for generations, the news must have seemed like a miracle. "How many species are trying to contact us?" she asked. 17 confirmed so far, with more coming in every hour, Minyoung replied. The Althari are requesting permission to send a diplomatic delegation to Earth. The Nilvani want to establish a philosophical exchange program. The Verdani are offering to share their agricultural technology in exchange for military advisors. As the days passed, the true scope of the victory became clear. The Harvest Fleet had been the galaxy's nightmare for so long that most species had forgotten what it felt like to hope. Now, suddenly, there was a force that could stand against the machines. Elder Theron approached Su-young as she stood watching the stars. His crystalline skin had changed in the weeks since the battle, developing a permanent silver tinge that hadn't been there before. According to Kalari cultural experts, this was the color of those who had learned to fight a mark that would stay with him for the rest of his life. "Your species has changed us," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before the war. "We can never return to what we were before this conflict." So-young nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Neither can we. Taking on the role of protector changes the protector as much as those being protected. The transformation wasn't just happening to the Kalari. Across human space, military academies were being expanded to train officers in alien technology. The xenopsychology had become a required course for all military personnel. Earth's children were growing up in a galaxy where humanity was no longer alone, but also no longer innocent. "Do you regret it?" Theron asked, his crystals shifting to a thoughtful purple. Our people were just beginning to explore the stars. "Now you've become responsible for defending civilizations you've never met." "Regret is the wrong word," Su-young replied. "We're not the same species we were 6 months ago. We've learned things about ourselves that we might never have discovered otherwise." The establishment of the Galactic Defense Council 6 months later marked the beginning of a new era. The ceremony took place on Luna, an especially constructed facility that could accommodate beings from dozens of different species. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to sign the founding charter. Admiral Tommen stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that would have been impossible to imagine just a year earlier. Kalari, with their crystalline skin, sat next to Althar, whose plant-like appendages swayed gently in the artificial breeze. Nilvani philosophers shared seating with Verdani engineers, their different biologies creating a rainbow of alien life. Gathered today not as conquerors or conquered, Taman began, his words being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously, but as partners in the defense of all free life in this galaxy. The human contribution to the Council was clear: military doctrine, strategic planning, and the psychological ability to wage war. But the alien species brought gifts that humanity could never have developed alone. Kalari crystal technology revolutionized communications. Althari biological sciences advanced human medicine by centuries. Nilvani philosophy provided new frameworks for understanding consciousness and intelligence. The galaxy has learned something important, Theron said during his speech at the ceremony. Peace is not simply the absence of war. True peace requires the strength to defend what we value and the wisdom to know when that strength must be used. As the months passed, the new alliance began to take shape. Human military advisors worked alongside alien scientists, creating hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Training academies across the galaxy taught young beings from multiple species how to work together in defense of their worlds. The most profound change was philosophical. The galaxy's peaceful species had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to preserve what they held dear. They had discovered that the capacity for war, properly controlled, could be a tool for protecting peace. Humanity, meanwhile, had learned that being the galaxy's protector was both an honor and a burden. They were no longer just fighting for Earth, but for civilizations across the stars. The age of galactic peace through strength begun. Ambassador Hygen's footsteps echoed through the corridors of the Galactic Defense Headquarters as she made her morning rounds. 2 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Kalari, and the Luna facility had grown from a small diplomatic outpost into the beating heart of galactic defense coordination. The transformation was remarkable. What had once been sterile human corridors now buzzed with activity from dozens of different species. Kalari technicians worked alongside human engineers, their crystalline fingers dancing over control panels while they integrated alien technology into Earth's defense systems. In the communication center, Althari botanists used their plant-based neural networks to coordinate with distant worlds, while Nilvani philosophers helped resolve conflicts between species with radically different worldviews. Ambassador called out a familiar voice as Hygen entered the main command center. General Kyung-ho approached with his usual brisk military stride, though his uniform now bore the insignia of Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. The promotion had come with responsibilities that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. General, she replied, accepting the data tablet he handed her. What's the situation report today? 17 new requests for military advisors, Kyung-ho said, his expression serious. The Vorlock system is reporting attacks from something they call the Silent Spreaders. From their descriptions, it sounds like another mechanical species. But these ones seem to absorb sound and communication rather than consuming matter. Hygen scrolled through the reports, her linguist's mind automatically cataloging the different ways various species described threats. Each alien civilization had their own perspective on danger, their own way of understanding conflict. The Harvest Fleet had been just the beginning. The galaxy was full of predators that had evolved to exploit peaceful species. What about the Zephyrian request? She asked, remembering the urgent message that had arrived the previous day. Already approved, Kyung-ho replied. Commander Duhayan is leading a joint task force to their system. Apparently they're dealing with something that feeds on stellar energy. It's literally draining their sun. The scope of humanity's new responsibilities was staggering. In just 2 years, Earth had gone from an isolated world to the military coordinator for half the galaxy. Every week brought new threats, new challenges that required human tactical thinking combined with alien technology. How are the training programs progressing? Jean asked, as they walked toward the academy section of the facility. Better than expected, Kyung-ho admitted. The Kalari have adapted remarkably well, too. Military thinking, They've developed what they call aggressive preservation, the philosophical framework that allows them to engage in violence while maintaining their core values. Through the observation windows, Hyjin could see the training grounds where young beings from multiple species practiced combat techniques. Human instructors worked patiently with alien cadets, teaching them not just how to fight, but how to think strategically under pressure. The Kaleri aren't the only ones adapting, she observed, watching a mixed unit of humans and aliens execute a complex tactical maneuver. Look at our own people. It was true. The humans in the training facility moved differently than they had 2 years ago. They carried themselves with the confidence of those who knew they were protecting something larger than themselves. The burden of being the galaxy's military leaders had changed them, given them a sense of purpose that transcended national boundaries. Captain Su Young's report from the Al-3 system was particularly interesting, Kung Ho continued. She says the plant-based species have developed a form of biological warfare that's completely non-lethal but incredibly effective. They can make enemy forces fall asleep or become disoriented without causing permanent harm, combining their pacifist nature with human tactical thinking, Hyjin mused. It's exactly what we hoped would happen. Intercom crackled to life, announcing another incoming distress signal. Hyjin and Kung Ho exchanged glances. This was the new reality. Earth's children were growing up in a galaxy where humanity was responsible for defending civilizations they had never met, using technologies they were still learning to understand. Sometimes I wonder if we're ready for all this, Kung Ho admitted. Quietly, ready or not, we're here, Hyjin replied. The galaxy needs us, and we won't let them down. Later that evening, as she prepared her official report for the Earth Council, Hyjin reflected on how much had changed. The final entry in her report captured the magnitude of humanity's transformation. Humanity has accepted its role as the galaxy's shield. We never sought this responsibility, but we will not abandon it. The death world that forged us as warriors now serves a greater purpose, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Ouch. Our children will grow up not just as humans, but as guardians of galactic peace. She paused, looking out at the Earth rising over Luna's horizon. The blue planet looked the same as always, but everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they were no longer just fighting for their own survival. The galaxy was no longer defenseless. History had been made, written in the language that humans understood best, the art of war in service of peace.